If you're wondering when our fellow Americans are going to recognize the damage that Donald Trump is doing to this country, I want to point out that more and more Americans are. This is easy to miss because it doesn't get covered much, but public opinion has been moving quickly and dramatically away from the president. Among young people, he's lost 34 points of support. And I think it's because he's failing to keep his most basic promises. He hasn't brought prices down. They're going up because of his actions. The economy as a whole is getting worse. And most Americans see that and recognize it. And it's showing up in the way that they think and talk about the president. So don't fall for this attempt to make you feel disempowered. Raising our voices makes a difference. It's clearly having an effect, and we've got to keep it up.
Oh, absolutely well said, Pete, but I think there's far more to it than that. Yeah, Trump is underwater on every single issue. Public opposition is building against him. His approval ratings are absolutely in the toilet. Trump is underwater on his approval in every single demographic, including men, including white people, including Gen X and boomers. Those were all groups that served him well in the 2024 election. And now a majority of all of those groups disapprove of him. That's according to the latest polling from The Economist on their Trump approval tracker. But I think it's far more than that. If you look at a piece that came out a couple of days ago from Strength in Numbers entitled "A Lot of Powerful People Just Don't Realize How Unpopular Trump Is," you'll understand that a lot of elites in this country, a lot of powerful figures who are currently being pillars of support to the Trump regime, are just starting to wake up to the fact that we all are miserable and we can't stand what Trump is doing and that he's incredibly weak and unpopular. And once those powerful people, those pillars of support, start to understand that popular support has turned against Trump, they're not going to be so anxious to support him as vigorously or like at all, right? One of the key ways that you erode those pillars of support under a weak autocrat is that you have a mass public display of opposition. That's why events like No King's Day coming up on October 18th are so important. They communicate to those pillars that the people are pissed off, that the people don't want what's happening now, and there is no reason to continue to support the autocrat, the would-be autocrat. I know it seems like we are insignificant, but the people actually do have the power. We actually do influence those institutions and powerful figures, right? Part of the reason Trump was so quickly able to seize control is he made it sound like everybody loved him. He was super popular. He was overwhelmingly backed by the American people. Trump never had a mandate from the American people. He did not get 50% of the vote. It has always been a minority of voters and definitely a minority of the American people who supported him. And what support he did had is slipping. Not slipping, it's sliding down the hill, right? It is that rolling stone that's gathering no moss, but it's gathering a shit ton of momentum. So anyway, back to this piece from Strength in Numbers by G. Elliott Morris. I recommend you go read the whole thing. If you're watching this on my other channel, I will have a link to the article in the description. So the article starts off talking about ABC, Disney canceling Jimmy Kimmel after the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, threatened to revoke the broadcast licenses of television stations because Trump was pissed, right? This was a clear First Amendment violation. Corporations can do whatever they want, right? Your free speech rights are about the government not interfering. We saw the president of the United States and the FCC chair threaten a corporation into silencing Jimmy Kimmel. That resulted in a swiftly organized boycott, which we're all still doing, right? Disney did have to put Jimmy Kimmel back on the air, although Sinclair Media Group did not. That boycott that we all put together very quickly became 4 times as large as any boycott over the last 5 years. Right? Last week when the stock market overall was up, Disney stock was down. And why is all of this Disney stuff important? Well, because it highlights the fact that CEOs living in their insulated, wealthy bubbles are really clueless as to how deeply unpopular Trump was. The CEO of Disney thought it was going to be a good move to cancel Jimmy Kimmel because Donald Trump had a temper tantrum. And Disney was blindsided by the massive public response. As this article says, this all intersects with a point I've been trying to make for a while. Many people fundamentally underestimate how unpopular Trump is. As the Disney episode illustrates, they do this at their own peril. Let's get into the data a little bit. If you compare Trump's job approval rating With other recent presidents, he stands out, and not in a good way. If you compare Trump's job approval rating to Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and George W. Bush, who all had net positives, Donald Trump is looking real rough. He is deeply underwater. In fact, his job approval rating has been in the negatives since February. Trump's entire domestic policy agenda is also underwater, especially on the economy and inflation. Those were the two issues that pollsters tell us won him the 2024 election. Trump is underwater on immigration, deportation, jobs in the economy, healthcare, trade, inflation, cost of living, and his overall approval. And this is a really key point here. The problem for Donald Trump is not just that more people disapprove than approve of him, it's that the disapprovers feel their emotions much more intensely. When you look at the strongly disapprove versus strongly approve numbers, twice as many voters strongly disapprove as strongly approve. The article goes on to say a lot of non-voters hate Donald Trump. Consumer-facing companies keep siding with Trump. Why? Regulatory pressure is one explanation. Maybe Disney, ABC are really worried about Brendan Carr taking local station licenses away from them. Maybe they're more worried about that than their audiences. I mean, I think they're more worried about deals and their profit, right? Paramount did what it needed to in order to get their Skydance merger through Carr's FCC. It's all about cronyism. It's all about the grift. It's all about profit at the expense of American democracy. But this part here, broadcast licenses don't help you if you have nobody to broadcast to. They forgot about the power of the people. They forgot that if we don't want to watch their shit, or like Target, we don't want to buy their products, it doesn't matter how much ass they kiss with the regime. The author goes on to say, from what I can tell, executives at these companies that are bending the knee, that are being a pillar of support collaborators with fascism, are making a simple statistical mistake that is imperiling their decision-making. They are assuming all U.S. adults in September 2025 look like U.S. voters in 2026. They're still looking at the fact that 49.8% of U.S. voters voted for Donald Trump in 2024. Right? They're looking at the fact that 48.3% of voters voted for Kamala Harris, and they're like, okay, we got to keep the public on our side. We need to do whatever the 49.8% of Trump voters want. And then they just like threw away the 48.3% of Kamala Harris voters. And then the, 15% of voters who didn't vote at all. But the article goes on to explain they are neglecting a crucial statistic. 64.1% is the share of voting eligible adults who turned out in 2024. That's right, not all adults voted in 2024. Right, so if you truly want to understand the percentage of people who voted for Donald Trump, you have to look at the fact that not only did he only get 49.8% of the vote, but also that only 64% of eligible voters cast a vote. That means if you look at registered voters, that Trump only got 31.9% of the vote. So that means fewer than 1/3 of American adults are actually Trump voters. 32% of voting eligible adults voted for Trump. Current disapproval of Donald Trump is over 50%. It's not hard to see how the decision-making based simply on the election results in 2024 is actually pissing off a majority of Americans, and how this would convert to being bad for business, right? Elections reward coalitions of voters, while markets respond to consumers. That is voters and non-voters whose preferences show up not just on election day, but in audience ratings, subscription revenue, and purchases. If a president is unpopular with the broader public and not just with people who voted in the last election, corporations are royally fucking up their math. This is one of the reasons I have said from the get-go that we have to hit these pillars of support in the wallet. And I think that this is such an important point. Yet we aren't just voters, we are also consumers, and far more of us are consumers than actually vote. Corporations continuing to be pillars of support under the regime have really fucked up their calculus, and it is coming back to bite them in a big way. So how do we help these businesses learn this harsh lesson so that they are no longer willing to be pillars of support under the regime? We have to teach them that it is less profitable to support fascism than to support democracy.